Good morning. Thank you so much for listening to the Spirit of Liberty broadcast. We have a very action-packed episode planned for you this morning. We are going to get a little controversial, and we're going to get into some scriptures. We've got a lot we want to talk about. We have everything this morning is kind of centered around our We Ain't Changing segment, and this will be a really good one. But before we get into this program, as people get on, just want to say a little bit about what did everybody think about last Tuesday's? Was it Tuesday's show that we did? I thought it seemed like it was a big hit. Tuesday, yeah. The with the Church Split podcast, got pretty high ratings on that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I was trying to figure out why so many people were watching it. Like what made that such a intriguing discussion. But I do think it's interesting sometimes to listen to the other side and hear some of their arguments, because I don't like misrepresenting people. Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes with these people, I've misrepresented them a little bit because of the fact that they're all so different from one another. And I think that's one of the hard things about the trendies is you've got some form of trendies that are like your skinny jean wearing, look like freaks, mm-hmm. and everything. And we'll talk about them in a little bit today. But then there's others that, I mean, they just literally just kind of wear normal clothes to church. And it doesn't seem like they take that hardcore stances on positions, like, for example, a Bible version issue. And they try to be non-confrontational with things. But I don't think I'd really lump them into the category of like homo-like,
right?
You know, and I don't think those guys were that way.
No, and I think that's the big difference too between us and most forms of trendies. And these guys in particular, they're trying to unite everybody,
yeah,
and they don't believe in splitting over things. And so the thing is, I think they have strong opinions and positions on a lot of stuff. They're just not going to break fellowship over very much, where in the IFB, we break fellowship over everything.
Yeah.
Probably to a fault sometimes, but I do think a lot of the stuff that we talked about, I do think there's plenty of things that are worthy of breaking fellowship over that they don't. But I can see where the IFB can kind of be a turnoff to people if you have that kind of mindset, because, I mean, we're always trying to out King James each other, out Old Paths each other. You know, who hates the homos more? You know, it's just, it's always a big contest.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get some of that, but at the same time, you know, there are some things that are worthy. It's just because we do some stuff that's out of line, it doesn't mean that it's all out of line. And these guys aren't an example of that. But for example, too, some of the people that are out there that are very vocal against the IFB, you know, that often bring up the legitimate stuff. You know, they'll bring up some of the cover-ups and things like that. But the problem I have with some of these guys, too, is they also promote every left-wing, liberal talking point. You know, some of these guys are talking about how they should have women speaking in conferences and, you know, always talking about diversity and talking about, you know, how people are with those who just happen to be gay, and you know, they're just so accepting of every liberal left-wing talking point. And the thing is, you know, those ones are like the really bad ones, and we kind of like to lump all of them in. And
I do think it's important to make a distinction between the two.
Right.
Because those guys, like the church split guys specifically, they went after people like that, like less than a month ago.
Right.
They did a whole podcast about like,
well, the thing is, though, with them, though, so an example of a guy who goes after the IFB and, you know, covers a lot of the scandals and things, which I'm glad people expose this stuff, is this Preacher Boys doc guy.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that he does that, but I've watched some of his programs. I mean, and he's another one that just kind of pushes every liberal left-wing talking point that there is.
Yeah.
You know, to the point where, you know, people, they can come on his show and just talk about, feminism and LGBT stuff, and he just seems to get along great with these people.
Yeah.
But then the preacher boy, or the church split guy, Will, just did, you know, a podcast with him. I haven't watched it yet, but it's like, okay, all right, I get it. You're not like the preacher boys guy,
But you know what?
but you're not against that either.
Well, that's the thing. That makes perfect sense, though.
Mhm.
Because to him, he's probably like, well, feminism, well, Black Lives Matter,
Right.
well, any other random political issue. We should be about unity, and it's like there's some things worth dividing over.
Yeah, exactly.
And far more, and I get it, if you're out there and you're not from the IFB world and you think that maybe we're too harsh with some of the division, I might even give you that. Okay. But you guys are way too liberal with the division and just literally, it's just like the default position of like anytime there's contention or anytime there's an argument, it's just like, well, I guess we're just not going to talk about that anymore and let's just drop it completely and forget that it ever happened. And at the end of the day, you can pretend that you have unity all you want, but if you guys aren't walking together and you're just disagreeing on 100% of the issues that come up or 50% of the issues that come up, you don't have unity at all. You're just pretending that you have unity and you're deceiving yourself and everybody else around you.
Right. Yeah. So, let's get into the main topic of the day. And we notice the title is Give Not That Which is Holy Unto the Dogs. Let me read a few scriptures to you. And that's from Matthew 7:6, where it says, Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. Now, here's the question. Is that just talking about literal dogs and literal swine? Or is Jesus trying to teach a principle here? And I think there's clearly a principle being taught here that there's, you're not going to cast pearls before swine because they're not going to appreciate it. They're going to get angry because they want something that they can feast on, something they can chew on. And when you just throw something like that in front of them, they're just going to get mad and they're going to come after you. And we often use that term too when there's just some people that you shouldn't talk to. I'm not going to go preaching at a gay pride rally. I'm not, because I'm just going to get attacked.
Yeah.
The swine's going to turn again and rend me. And so, and you say, well, you should never call people dogs. But the truth is, I stole that from the Bible.
Yeah.
We see in Deuteronomy 23:18, it says, Thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy God for any vow, for even both of these are abomination unto the Lord thy God. Now, what's that dog talking about? Is that talking about a four-legged beast with paws? Or, in the concordance definition, it's a euphemism for a male prostitute. The Bible calls him a dog. We see in Philippians 3:2, it says, Beware of dogs. Beware of evil workers. Beware of the concision. Is that talking about four-legged beast? Or is that talking about not just exclusively homos, but just truly wicked people that is given over to a reprobate mind? There is no good in them. There is nothing of any redeemable quality in that person. We see in Revelation 22:14, Blessed are they that do his commandments, they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city, for without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. I don't believe that's talking about four-legged beasts there either. I think it's talking about two-legged beasts. And there are some people that Jesus died for, that God loved so much that he went to the cross for them, but they rejected him.
Yeah.
And they rejected him to a point where God said, all right, I'm done with you. I'm rejecting you. They've been given over to a reprobate mind, and they will never, ever get saved. And there are things that we see in Romans 1, some marks of someone given over to a reprobate mind that we see. And included in there is men that left the natural use of a woman. They burned in their lust one towards another. Women that went against nature. All these things, these are evidence of those who've been given over to a reprobate mind. And yet we're seeing today that many, and which in what I believe is a desperate attempt to be liked and loved, they are bending over backwards trying to reach dogs.
100%.
And I don't think we ought to do that, especially as a church. We need to keep our church safe. some people that shouldn't be in there. So let's go ahead and get ready to play our We Ain't Changing segment. This is about 7 minutes long. There's a lot I wanted to cover because here's the thing you got to understand. First off, we're not even supposed to be doing it, but the reason people are trying to do this now, this is a desperate attempt to be loved and accepted by the world, and it will always fail. And we give some evidence in this. So let's go ahead and play the We Ain't Changing segment.
We ain't changing!
For today's trend, we're going to be looking at the trend of churches reaching out specifically to the LGBT community. What are churches supposed to do? We know that this is a sin. We know that it is something that does not please God and is unacceptable, but yet churches are doing what they can to find a way to reach these people and get them into church, to make them feel comfortable and loved. And if you just Google how to reach out to the LGBT in church, you'll see many different articles on this subject. And I wanted to read one specific from the Gospel Coalition that I thought was very interesting, because we have the position at our church that we should not reach out to them, that we should actually reject them. And so they are dealing with this, and they start asking questions. And here, we're not going to read the whole article, but it says, what do you mean by gay community? Are you thinking of Christians who struggle with same-sex attraction? Or do you have in mind a particular neighborhood where a number of LGBT persons live and work? What do you mean by, reaching out? Do you have your theology squared away? Do you have a biblical view of marriage and sexuality? Another question, what do you mean by our church? Are you hoping to start an official church ministry? Do you expect Sunday services to change? Is it going to change something if LGBT come? Why do you want to reach this community? Because everyone needs the gospel. Why do you feel led to minister to LGBT persons? Are they your friends, coworkers, neighbors? Goes on. What are things like in your church community? And then it goes on. And what about you? Are you open about your own sin and your need for a Savior? What have you repented of lately? Are you mainly looking to love, or mainly looking to get something by loving these people? Are these people only these people, or are they individuals made in the image of God who need faith and repentance, justification and sanctification, love and friendship, warning and assurance? Don't get me wrong. I think reaching out to the gay community can be a wonderful thing, but we must be clear in our own hearts about the why and how of what we're doing. And basically what this article is saying is we should just treat them like everybody else. We should allow them in our church just like we would everyone else. And so this article from the Gospel Coalition is really trying to normalize them as much as possible. And what people need to realize is that will never satisfy these people. Here is another article from the Human Rights Campaign about stances of faith on LGBTQ issues, specifically the Southern Baptist Convention, that those of us who are independent fundamental Baptists, we would believe that they are way too soft on the LGBT crowd. But notice what they say. The Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in the United States with over 16 million members, has discriminated against gay and lesbian people for more than a quarter century. And then it goes on to talk about all the problems in the Southern Baptist world, because they do not support gay marriage and equality. They do think that it's a sin. They do believe that they could have that orientation change, and we're not going to go through all these things. But the last thing it mentions too, they discriminate. They're bad because on ordination, the Southern Baptist Convention does not ordain openly LGBTQ people, nor does it ordain women. So even the Southern Baptists, as soft as they are on this issue, it's not enough for these people. J.D. Greer, in an article that he wrote, the 3 ways we go wrong when discussing homosexuality, and J.D. Greer has said many very friendly, kind things towards them, and it's still not enough. The head of the Southern Baptist Convention, one of the things he said is we're wrong if we think same-sex behavior is a fundamentally different type of sin. But I'm sorry, it is in fact a different type of sin. It is something that is an abomination. The Bible does not call every sin an abomination. Leviticus 18:22, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. The Bible does not put the death penalty on every sin. Yet in Leviticus 20:13, it says, if a man also lie with mankind as he lieth with woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. You say, well, that's Old Testament. Well, even in Romans 1, in verse 24, says, wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change their natural use into that which is against nature. This is not a normal sin. This is something that is abnormal, something that happens when you are given over to a reprobate mind. And then it says, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. And if you read J.D. Greer's article, he talks about all the other sins mentioned in Romans 1, as well as homosexuality, thus making them all the same. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't look at the context. He doesn't look at it all as a full passage, because it goes on saying being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, and it names a whole bunch of sins. This is why this happened. These people, their lives were full of these sins. They would not repent. God tried to get across to them. God tried to save them, but they rejected God, and they rejected God to a point where God then rejected them, and he gave them over to the filthy abominations like homosexuality. And that is why it is a different thing. And if God has given them over to these things, if God has rejected them and given up on them, then why would we seek to bring them into our church and to put our children in danger? It is a wrong thing to do. It is contrary to the Word of God. And when it comes to reaching out to the LGBTQ community, all I can say is,
we ain't changing!
all right, well, there you have it. We ain't changing on that. We are not bringing them in, and it will not make them like us better, even if we start being nicer to them. And, everybody knows about the bombing that the Sodomites did on the First Works Baptist Church in El Monte, California. If you don't know about that, look that up. But I mean, literally, a homo, I saw this guy on Twitter, and he was one that kind of led this campaign against the church there. And basically, if we're going to go off today's standards, he incited the mob. He encouraged the bombing. Yeah. And what's funny is they called it Keep El Monte Friendly. Yeah. And then they went and blew the church up. That was their way of keeping El Monte friendly. Now, a lot of people look at that and say, oh, well, that's what he gets for agitating the homos, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, there is countless evidence and examples all over of these people attacking churches for just being against gay marriage, for just not ordaining homos.
Well, not even that. I mean, remember, a year, I think it was a little over a year ago, that people were going nuts over Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Over the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this stuff is crazy, because I went and looked on the Salvation Army and just went on their website. They've got a whole category on their website. This was right at the time that everyone was losing their minds about them, specifically dedicated to the homos. And I don't think out of the essay that they wrote about just how much they love the homos and how much they want to help them and everything going on, I don't think there was a single bit of them basically saying it's wrong. Mm-hmm. None of it. But the people still lost their minds on them, because even now, if you give them everything they want and you come to them and you say, okay, you know what, you guys are right, we're wrong, the thing is, they're still not done, because now they're just going to be mad at you because of what you used to be like.
Right.
You know, so the thing is, you know, homosexuality being an issue has always been, you know, something that Christians have stood on for years, that Christians have been mad about for years, that they've stood against for years, to the point where in this country, it was normal everywhere that they died. I mean, 100 years ago, it was normal everywhere that it was illegal and you go to prison for it. But the thing is, now everything's changing with it. And we're making a big deal about trying to reach these people because everyone's just having it shoved in their face all the time. And, you know, the thing is, everyone's weirded out by it. Everyone thinks it's disgusting. And the thing is, even if you change, even if at one point in your life you thought it was disgusting, and then you move down the road and say, you know what, I want to be loving and accepting to these people, unless you actually become one of them, you're never going to be enough for them. You're never going to be able to give them enough, you know, slack to the point where they're going to be okay with you and they'll accept you. Because even with a place like the Salvation Army that's so liberal and is bent completely over backwards for them, they're still not enough, you know, friendly to them, because at one point they didn't like them. So, you know, what I don't understand is why Christians don't just look at something that's this wicked and this disgusting and just band together and just say no. You know, why in the world can't we all together just agree this is a sick sin, it's disgusting, historically everybody's been against it, so what's the point now of just bending over backwards to them? They're the same weak little freaks that they've always been. We have no reason to reach out to them or change our position on this. That historically everybody's held. You know, people love to talk about church history and how the church has believed before. Well, you know, for the past 2,000 years, the church historically all across the board has believed these people are wicked, evil, disgusting freaks that deserve to die just for the fact of being a sodomite. So deal with that, trendies.
Yeah.
You know, honestly.
Yeah, and they like to try to act like they're going to out old paths us, you know, by going back to the reformers and stuff. But, you know, read what those guys said about them too.
Yeah.
So, and you know, the one thing that was different with Pastor Mejia than a lot of these places is usually when the homos get mad at you, the other people fall all over themselves apologizing, where he didn't. But the thing is, he shouldn't have, and neither should any of these other places. Even though their stances are weaker, you know, they don't need to apologize.
What do you apologize for?
Yeah, exactly. So, again, yeah, they're not going to be satisfied. And the thing is, I personally think this attempt to reach out to these people is an attempt to, because a lot of these people, especially in the trendy world, they do have a desire to be loved and accepted by the world. And I saw an idea day this week. One of the guys that was there tweeted some pictures. He's wearing a Black Lives Matter mask. One time they're at the church, I think it was at the church, he's wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, a white guy. And it's like, okay, I get it. I understand guilty white people. You know, I get that. You know, you watch a lot of news and you feel bad for being white. But the thing is, how come if I'm going to show my love for black people, I have to support an organization that promotes every bit of filth there is in the world too, that promotes transgender issues and all that kind of stuff? Why can't I just like black people? Because I do, you know, and I don't need to go around wearing a t-shirt that says I like them and that I love them and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of these people do because they're pandering to the left. They're pandering to the liberals, trying to show I'm not a threat, you know, I'm nice, I'm kind, I'm loving. Please don't look down on me because, you know, this Bible that I'm obligated to preach or that I'm pretending I preach just happens to say some really negative things towards LGBT. You know, I really am a nice person, and you just got to understand you're not going to satisfy them.
Never.
No.
Implacable.
It'll never happen. I mean, that I don't see how people don't realize that. Why they think they're going to be any different. I mean, when you look at a restaurant that just serves good chicken and fries, you know, in Chick-fil-A, and these people lose their minds because the person that started it was a Christian, and they know across the board Christians are against homos. You know, when they look at the Salvation Army, that literally its whole website is dedicated to it. You know, being there, not the whole website, but a whole section of the website dedicated to reaching out to these people. The problem is that these people that are constantly trying to reach out to these people, I don't think they'll ever understand, is that it's not about what you personally say. These people have it in their heads. Christians hate us. And it doesn't matter. As long as you're calling yourself a Christian, as long as you're going to church, as long as you have a Bible, whatever version it is in your hands, they will hate you. Because it's natural for people like that to hate Christians. And you know what? It's also natural for Christians to hate people like that. And they historically have. So I don't understand the compromise.
Right. Well, here's a few more scriptures. John 15:18. If the world hate you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. And what's just fires me up is whenever a Christian gets persecuted, like Jesus said they would, they act like you're not the Christ-like one.
Right.
You know, what was that Crevette said to Pastor Rager too?
He was talking about how, you know, Nathan Rager he's not of any use to the lost and dying
that's right.
of the world. And Pastor Rager's response was perfect. It's just that you are the lost and dying culture.
Right.
Because the thing is, if you try to reach these people by just being like them and acting like them, you're missing the point. You're not reaching them, they're reaching you. And they are not reproducers, they're recruiters. And the problem is a lot of these trendies are being recruited by homos.
Right.
I mean, you know what? Let's just talk about, you know, Idea Day, because that just happened. Josh Tice is the most flamboyant pastor I've ever seen in my life.
Go watch his unboxing videos.
That guy.
And see if your gaydar doesn't just go off the charts.
You know what? That guy's a freak. I don't care. You know, people can get mad at that and all these trends because we are attacking.
Now I got to invite him on the show.
Such a Christ-like people. Well, you know what? Have him on the show.
I would like to ask him.
Yeah.
Why?
Why are you so flamboyant?
Yeah.
Why are your pants so tight? Why are you, you know, just supporting why are you talking about welcome to Vegas,
Why
baby?
are you wearing a mask in your own church at your Idea Day when everybody else isn't? Who are you trying to impress? Okay, I've been nice to people that do it because they're trying to keep the government off their back. But in some places, it's not a problem. And so when you're just doing it, just being so stinking compliant on your own property, okay, when obviously it's not being enforced anywhere, because you know what? That just tells me you want to be liked. And I've seen a lot of these trendies, they are embracing all this social distancing stuff.
100%.
They're putting the arrows on their floors. And again, if you just had to do that to get the government off your back, I'm not against you for that. I get it. You did what you had to do to keep your doors open. And a lot of people that have done that, they are doing it, you know, just because they just don't want to fight a lot of unnecessary stuff. I'm fine with that. But when you are embracing this and then promoting it and your, you know, Facebook profile banner is stay home, stay safe. Unless it's a picture of you not at home, not being safe, like mine, where it's me out in public, not wearing my mask, you know, then, you know, I'm sorry, I can't help but think you're just desperate to be loved by this world.
That's exactly what it is. Because no one enjoys acting like a flamboyant freak.
No.
You know, you don't do that as a man, unless there's something literally wrong with you in the head and you are one of these freaks. You don't get comfortable acting like that. I don't understand the flamboyancy.
Right. And you know, we're going to be terrible people, considered terrible people for all the things that we're saying about him right now. But let me tell you something. I know a lot of preachers in the old IFB, they were saying this stuff about him several years ago when he started this Idea Day stuff. They called it with this dude. Yeah. They talked about the direction. They talked about where it was going to end up. And they were 100% right. Yeah. They were calling him. I can't remember how many years ago I was at Old Paz conference, you know, in Elgin, and Keith Gomez is talking about him, calling him a sissy. Most of these guys, though, they just don't do it online like we do. Yeah. But all the stuff we're saying, you think we're mean? You should have heard the stuff they were saying about him several years ago, even before it was as bad as open as it is now.
Yeah, when you say like, how dare you guys talk about Josh Tice this way? He's a brother. Well, if Josh Tice is a brother, how dare he dress up and talk like a homo and act like he's representing the body of Christ? These people come at us all the time and act about being Christ-like and everything. You really think Jesus Christ would walk around in skinny jeans, prancing around, talking like a homo, acting like a homo, looking like a homo? I mean, I'm to the point where if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Right.
And I don't want to just come out and say Josh Tice is a homo, because I really don't think he is. But if someone has that thought cross their mind, I can't blame them at all.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that I'm convinced.
No.
Because what it seems like, based on his church, I mean, based on the fact that he's wearing a submission mask in church too, when he didn't have to, I see a guy that's pandering to the world, that's trying to be liked by the world. And it is very common in our culture today for, guys to just act soft, effeminate, flamboyant. And one thing that has always drove us crazy is in restaurants and stuff, when teenage guys, when they're using their polite voice, they sound like a homo. And it is just the most revolting thing. And then you hear them talking with their coworkers and they talk like a normal man. Right. So a lot of people, they think that's just how you're supposed to talk, because that's what they're seeing on Hollywood. That's what they're watching on all their programs. And so they're following the trends of this world. And so you have preachers that are doing that same thing too. Yeah. So the thing is, do you act like that at home? And look, on the old path side, we got fakes too, where you have guys that have their preacher voices that, they try to talk a lot more manly than they actually are. And it's all fake stuff. And, as soon as they get up behind the pulpit, they get their preaching voice and they get their spiritual voice going on. They start getting in the spirit and start talking with the goat voice, get the vibrato and all that kind of stuff. But at least it's manly the way they talk. It's fake, but at least they're trying to appeal to the manly culture, and then they get out of the pulpit and then they talk like a normal human being. That irritates me. Yeah. And I've known preachers that literally they all of a sudden magically have a Southern accent when they start preaching. And because if you're in the camp meeting world, you're not getting anywhere without a Southern accent. That's true. It's just not going to happen. And so they literally fake a Southern accent when they're behind the pulpit. I think that's revolting too. Yeah. So but that tells me who they are pandering to. Mm-hmm. So when you talk like that, when you dress like that, when you act like that, when I see a guy from Illinois, all of a sudden he goes to the camp meeting and he's preaching and he's got a Southern accent and he's wearing cowboy boots and a big belt buckle. Yeah. You're a phony. Yeah. Okay.
But you look who he's pandering to. He's pandering to Southerners.
Right.
And then you see Josh Tice or any of these other people that, and I'm not going to broad brush. I know that not every single trendy is like this. So stop accusing us of this. Address the point that we're dealing with.
Not all of them sit with their legs crossed like a lady when they're up on the stage.
Exactly. Not all of them.
He does.
So don't sit back and criticize this podcast and say, oh, you're broad brushing and saying every trendy is like this. No. Address the issue that we're actually dealing with right now. Josh Tice is extremely flamboyant, and that is wrong.
Yeah, and can somebody
you can't get around that?
Somebody define effeminate for me in the trendy world.
Seriously.
Is that sin? Not capable of being, committed today?
Mm-hmm. Well, these same people talk about they're on like the women's jeans side of the debate, and they're like, oh well, the woman can wear jeans and they can be feminine. Okay, I'll give that to you. So is it cross-dressing if a man wears feminine jeans? Can we deal with that issue? Because I don't see how you could answer that question and be honest with yourself there. Mm-hmm. Because women's jeans are designed to be form-fitting and skinny. And if you want to say that's feminine, I'll agree with you. So is it feminine when a guy wears form-fitting skinny jeans? And you say, why are you guys always talking about skinny jeans all the time? Because you look like an effeminate freak.
We're embarrassed for you.
It's crazy, man.
When the Bible says it's a shame for a man to have long hair, it's like, well, a lot of guys with long hair are not ashamed. Mm-hmm. No, but I'm shamed for them.
Right.
Because they're an embarrassment to the male gender.
Yeah, and it's like when you've got when you see someone that's got a bunch of food stuck in their teeth or something, you want to tell them, hey, get that out of your teeth.
Right.
When I see people standing up trying to claim the name of Christ and act like they're good people, that look like this and dress like a homo and talk like a homo, I just want to bang my head on the wall and tell these people, stop doing that.
Right.
You know, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping anyone around you.
Yeah, but well, hey, we're going to end today with our preaching clip of the week, and man, the time goes by so fast in this. I wanted to talk about a lot more of these things, but basically, the gist of this thing, there's some people we're just not going to reach out to.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do for them, and they will endanger. It'll put our church in danger. And, again, the Preacher Boys guy, I love it that he exposes perverts. Mm-hmm. I hope he keeps exposing the perverts in churches and, wakes a lot of churches up to that. I hope he keeps doing that. But I wish he'd understand, too, that pedophiles and LGBT are all in the same boat.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are right when it comes to these perverts should never be allowed back in the pulpit,
100%.
Shouldn't be allowed in churches. I mean, I'm right there with you. But stop listening to the world on these things who have not put the pedophiles in the same boat yet. They're getting there.
Yeah,
Anytime I hear somebody call them a minor attracted person, I get angry. I get really angry.
If you refer to them as minor attracted people, you probably shouldn't be breathing either.
Right. There's something very, very wrong with you because you're assuming that that's like some kind of normal thing. These people should never be restored. And so, God bless him when he's exposing the perverts and the Cameron Giovanellis and all these preachers that are covering for them. But good night. Stop running to every left-wing, leftist talking point and stuff.
Yep.
That is completely out of line.
Yeah.
And you're missing the point. And all you got to do is put a few more letters along with the P's there and treat them the same way, and you'll be right there with us on this. But they're not doing that. They're literally trying to get these people in church and even talking about how they don't get ordained and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I'm starting to think that your main problem with the IFB is not cover-ups and perversion, but it's the doctrine.
Yeah.
And you use the bad examples as an excuse to just go after everything good about the IFB.
Yeah, that's the gateway. Because these same people hate people like us too.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all against the same stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's the problem with us if your problem is just the cover-ups and the perversion? Well, the problem is everything else about the IFB.
Well, they act like we're all complicit too. And it's like, okay, what do y'all need me to do?
Yeah.
Because
we need to literally,
first off, I've never been in a church that's had any type of thing like this. I have known churches and known people who were involved in cover-ups, and you know what? I don't fellowship with those people, and I've called it out in many cases. I mean, I'm on record calling out a lot of people, naming a lot of names on stuff, and especially if it's somebody I'm associated with. I don't have anything to do with pervs or those who harbor pervs.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else I could do. I mean, I feel like Trump at that debate. Is there a name you want me to call him when they were talking about like the KKK and stuff? What do you want me to say? Give me a name. I'll call him that. But at the same time, I don't think that's your main issue. I'm not trusting your message. But anyway, so hopefully in the next weeks, we might do more calls. We don't have any time today. Apparently last week I was getting texts and I didn't even realize it because I'm using this new phone app. So all of you who got ignored last week when you were sending texts in, I apologize. I did not even realize that they were coming through. And so I felt bad about that later when I saw all the texts that came in that I just completely ignored. But there was a lot of stuff about dispensationalism too. It looks like a couple different ones. But anyway, we might make that kind of a regular thing on here, just letting you call throughout. But I do appreciate you watching this. So to close it out, because it's a little longer of a clip too, we are going to go to our preaching clip of the week. And I am not going to announce who this is. I'm just going to let you all watch and see. So we are going to go to our preaching clip of the week. And this person is about to receive great honor and glory like they've never received before, being featured. So this is going to close it out for us. And then you stay tuned and watch this final preaching clip of the week that is really good. So God bless you. We'll see you all next week. Roll that clip.
The preacher featured on this clip is not necessarily endorsed by Pastor McMurtry or the Spirit of Liberty broadcast, nor does the preacher being featured necessarily endorse this broadcast or Pastor McMurtry. The makers of the Spirit of Liberty broadcast just heard this clip and thought,
That's good preaching.
Now, when you say the word reprobate, people might be tempted to think about the Calvinists, because Calvinists use the word reprobate a lot, and they teach a horrible version of this doctrine. And I wanted to read this because it's also really funny, because these same Calvinists, a lot of these different trendies that we've interacted with on, Twitter and different social medias, a lot of them are Calvinists, okay? And they really despise any preaching against homosexuality. While they might disagree with it and they might call it a sin, they hate everything that we have to say about it, and they hate what the Bible has to say about it. These same people will get just so upset about the fact that we say that there are people walking this earth today that have already sealed their fate, that they've already sealed their destiny. But here's the thing. Calvinists also teach something called predestination. Okay? They teach that people, before they're even born, that God already decided that they would be saved. Here's the thing when you teach that doctrine, though. If you teach that there's people that God decided would be saved, you also teach that there's people that God decided would not be saved. You teach in predestination and election. Well, there's something else that you teach. And I got this quote. It's a little lengthy, but I'll read it for you. This is from a pretty famous Calvinist book. I didn't get the title of it, but this is a woman writing, explaining the doctrine of predestination and saying something else that goes along with it. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to say about the reprobate doctrine. And it's not at all what we believe. But this is what it says. It says, the doctrine of absolute predestination, of course, logically holds that some are foreordained to death as truly as others are foreordained to life. The very terms elect and election imply the terms non-elect and reprobation. When some are chosen out, others are left not chosen. The high privileges and glorious destiny of the former are not shared with the latter. This too is of God. We believe that from all eternity, God has intended to leave some of Adam's posterity in their sins, and that the decisive factor in life of each is to be found only in God's will. As Mosley has said, the whole race after the fall was one mass perdition, and it pleased God in his sovereign mercy to rescue some and to leave others as they were, to raise some up to glory, giving them such grace as necessarily qualified them for it, and abandon the rest, from whom he withheld such grace, to eternal punishment. So here's what we do that everyone gets offended about. How many people, just by a show of hands, have seen the new head of the Department of Health for the United States of America that Joe Biden put up? So he did a little backdoor trick on him, and he got an old white man in there that they just so despise. But the problem is that old white man identifies himself as an old white woman. This is the head of the health department for the United States of America, okay? Absolutely disgusting. So see, we look at that and say, that's a reprobate, okay? They get offended at that. But here's the thing. They'll look at a newborn baby that hasn't done anything wrong, that's just born, that's just taken its first breath of life, and say, that's a reprobate. They don't know for sure, but they're saying God in his mind said, this brand new baby that's never done anything wrong, that never even had a chance to give any wrong, never had a chance to sin, before they've done anything wrong, their life doesn't matter. The next 50 to 100 years of their life doesn't matter. They're just destined to go to hell. That's a wicked, terrible doctrine. And that goes right along with predestination. It's not like that's a sect of Calvinism that just, only some of the radical extremists believe. If you believe predestination, you believe that. That's a terrible, terrible, terrible doctrine. It's terrible and it's wicked. But here's the thing. These same people are crazy hypocrites because they get so offended at the idea that we teach that people, based off of their own choices, their own actions, have gotten themselves a reprobate mind. They teach that a newborn baby that's not had any opportunity to take any action and to reject the grace of God is a reprobate. That's sick.
That's good preaching.